Well, John, do you want to get us started since we don't have a mayor?
Yeah, so since Councilmember Severing's doing the thought and invocation, we just thought we'd start with him and then I'll explain the process for electing a chair for the meeting. But welcome everyone to City Council meeting.
Yes, I will give an opening prayer and also the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, we do gather this night with great gratitude that we can meet meet in this city and have a country that has experienced so many blessings and the freedoms that we enjoy. We're grateful to be able to serve the citizens we love and we appreciate them and pray for so many of them that may struggle in physical or spiritual or emotional ways. May they be strengthened. We pray that our city will be a safe place for all of the citizens. We love and appreciate them. Pray this night can be a night of appropriate conversation and decisions rendered that will be best for the city. And we pray for this and give thanks in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So council, this is a unique situation. Both the mayor and the mayor pro tem are out of town. So when that happens, those in attendance at the meeting elect essentially a chairman or a mayor pro tem for the meeting. So we need you to do that, and then that person will run the meeting, and your tenure as mayor pro tem will end as soon as the gavel strikes at the end of the meeting. So,
John, I nominate Councilman Delpas to be that pro tem tonight.
A second.
okay. So if you'll just go down the line and vote, since technically no one's in charge yet, you can start with Councilman Delpas, I guess, and head this way.
Yes.
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 Okay. It is your show, Councilman Delpas.
All right. Well, welcome out everyone tonight to our city council meeting. Our first item on the agenda is a presentation by our Victim Advocate Services individual, which is Maria Cabrera.
Hello. How are you guys doing today? Good, good. Okay, so today's presentation is victim services for third and fourth quarter, at least I guess until we still have a month left in the quarter, but for whatever's now. So what I'm going to go over is the demographics of victims, the types of victimizations, and the services that I've provided. So this time I've served 52 people, and I wanted to mention that I am VOCA granted. So this is part of that program that I have to do presentations. And the numbers that are listed on here is 75% of what my actual numbers would be. And so it doesn't reflect all the victims, but it yeah, anyways. So for this time it's been 52. So I had served 52 victims. Their race or ethnicity, we had one Asian, one black African American, 2 Hispanic, 41 white, non-Latino, and then 7 of them were not reported. Their gender, which they were identified as, were 21 male, 29 female, and then 2 of those were not reported. The ages run from 0 to 12 were 9 victims, 13 to 17, 4, 18 to 24, 2, 25 to 59, 24, and 16 and older were 12. The types of victimizations, so these include 10 adult physical assaults, 4 adults sexually assaulted as children, 1 burglary, 7 child physical abuse, 19 domestic violence, and 13 identity theft, fraud, financial crimes. 8 are vehicular victimizations, which include hit and runs, or just accidents where there were victims that may not have had insurance, stuff like that. Stalking or harassment, 7. And then criminal mischief, violation of a protective order or theft. There were 21 of those. 21 of those victims received services with more than one type of victimization. So means that there could have been a child's physical abuse, which can include a child just being present in presence of a domestic violence. So then the domestic violence would be two types. So child abuse and then domestic violence, or an assault could include domestic violence and assault, stuff like that. And go ahead. And services provided. So my first contact is always provide victims with information about the criminal justice, information about their victims' rights and how to obtain notifications. And then I also follow up with them throughout the months, just depending on what if they have to go to court, stuff like that. And referral to victim services programs, what were 8. Interpreter services, there was 1 victim. And then criminal civil justice system assistance. These include notification of criminal justice events were 91 times, 17 completed victim impact statements, 8 were assisted with restitution, and 67 prosecution interview advocacy or accompaniment, which means like every Monday that I go to court, that counts as part of the services when they have court. And then law enforcement interview advocacy accompaniment, or 42. These are when I speak to an officer or detective, that I go back and forth on that, or if I have to speak to the front office or anything like that, that counts as a service. And then 10 criminal advocacy accompaniment. This is if I go out with them or I call another service provider that's part of the services that I would provide for them, or if I go with them to speak to a Usain nurse or anything like that, that would be part of that service. And that is it on my presentation. Do you guys have questions about anything? Go ahead.
So I guess my not biggest question, but on a day-to-day basis, it's really just hitting or not hitting, touching the folks that you're currently dealing with. I mean, is that because they contact you, or do you contact them, I guess, when it starts?
So just depending on the case, and I usually keep track of them, and then sometimes they call me,
Okay.
depending on where they are in the process. There are times when I'll look at a case and then that's been like 6 months to a year behind, but I call them anyway just to see how they're doing, kind of thing. So
Okay.
it really just depends on where I see victims might need more assistance than others. There's no time frame as of, just right now. It could be 6 months, a year from now. I've had victims contact me from 4 years ago. So it really just depends on
Cool.
on the situation.
Thanks. Yep.
Mhm. Anything else? No? Okay.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Your services are very important. We appreciate what you do. We're going to move on to the consent agenda, and we're going to call for any conflicts of interest. So are there any council members here in attendance that have any conflicts that they need to disclose? Okay, I don't see any conflicts of interest being stated at this time. So we will go ahead and move into the active agenda. We will take public comments. And just as a reminder to folks that are here or online, we'd like to limit comments to 5 minutes if possible, and make sure that you keep your comments as positive in nature and as constructive in nature as possible as well.
Hi, I'm Doug Myler. I represent New Hope, which is a suicide prevention and awareness coalition. Our director is Lindsay Pulver. I don't know if related or not. Anyway, so we do community events. Our goal is to get the word out for the resources and to help you in whatever you need in your community. So reach out to us whenever you need. In that sense, we do events too. So like the car show we just did, and that was fabulous success, but it's targeted for that really the most vulnerable and risk group is men 20 to 65. They're the highest rate. And we're in Utah anyway, which is the 6th highest suicide rate state in the union. So it is a problem. We all probably know someone that we know how to help. So we're here to help you to get resources to table events. I don't know if you have certain things that you'd like us to come and just get the word out, get the resources to people that they need. Other things we do are ribbon tying events. So we have a sister support group. They're called Legacy by an 85-year-old couple. They're just darling. And they have done that for so long. They lost their son 35 years ago, but they help support the survivors. So that's postvention, we call it. So prevention is important, but postvention is after it happens, because then the family, friends, they become survivors and they are at risk. So the postvention is just as important as the prevention. So we have that support group. We have on the coalition, so we have Ogden Pride is on there. We have Weber Human Services. It's ministered out of Weber State and also in connection with Intermountain Healthcare. We have the Hope Squads. We have Weber Morgan Health Center. We have all these licensed and wonderful counselors that can help. So I don't know how to get my information. I can give it to you. We talked earlier, so that's great. And so it's kind of a back scratching win-win situation, because I live in Roy, so I'm one volunteer. We have another volunteer in Riverdale, but I thought I'd go to the city councils because we need more of a perspective. So we really need more volunteers to help, because these tabling events don't just happen. And that car show event, we had a obstacle course for the kids while their parents were talking. It took a lot of work. So we really need someone from the good city of North Ogden. That would be fabulous. So thank you for letting me present.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Kurt Illum. I'm a North Ogden resident. I got 3 things I need to bring up. The first one my wife asked me to bring up. This coming Saturday is the Army's 250th birthday, being founded in 1775. She is hosting in front of our house. She's going to have some sheet cakes and some chairs, and we'll provide some shade. We'd like to invite each of you, the city council, you too, John, to come by between 1 and 3 Saturday. We live right on the corner of 800 and 3300, 805 East, 3300 North. So if anybody here in the audience is welcome. She's put it out on Facebook a number of times, number of places. The other 2 issues I have, one, since I've retired last year and I'm home during the day, I see a lot of construction going on up 800, and that's okay. That's good, right? We got a lot of building going on up there. But the thing I've noticed is a lot of the construction trucks, the brick trucks, the lumber trucks, the cement trucks, whoever else is going up and down the street, when they come down, and I know it's a steep hill, but they tend to roll through the stop sign, not stop. And we got a lot of kids in the neighborhood. You know, we're during the school year, we're 2 blocks from Bates Elementary, and we're, you know, a block and a half from the park. It's right down the street on 3300. It'd sure be nice to have somebody come through there and take a look at that. I know the Ogden police officer, he parks his car on the street. That helps a little bit when he's off duty. But it seems like what's going on 3300, there's a lot of speeding going up. I mean, I've seen people going probably 50, 60 miles an hour. Even the school buses, when they come out, are coming up 40 to 45 miles an hour on that road. So it seems like we could do something to alleviate that, especially with all the kids we've got around the neighborhood. The third issue I have is, I know you're going to get ready to wince, dogs on leashes. So I inherited from my stepson a pit bull Dalmatian mixed dog that they were having problems with, and she's a good dog and we're training her. However, she's very protective of me. So when a dog approaches that's not on a leash, that meaning they're running at us, or even sometimes kids on bikes, she gets a little excited. We have to hold her back from that. But, you know, a dog coming up, it's not okay to have your dogs running out off leash. We've actually called the non-dispatch number a couple of times. One time we saw someone responded, the policeman came by, but he just drove through. He didn't stop at the house that was reported to have the dog out. We told him where the dog was out. You know, he didn't stop and talk to us. We were out there. He just kind of drove through the neighborhood and let it go. So I think there needs to be some attention there. And I know I've talked to people. I get it, right? It takes resources, takes time, takes money. But if we need to plan better, because this is not a new ordinance. You know, these ordinances have been on the books for 50 years. And are we not planning our resources, or we can't get our resources, or whatever? I think something needs to be done along those lines. I would hate to see a dog running up to play with me while I've got my pit bull on my leash, because she will protect me, and she will protect her 6-foot radius she's allowed to be in. So, and we all know where that would go with her. So, you know, I'm spending a lot of money, a lot of time to train her not to do those things. But it'd just be nice if people, you know, no, your dog's not okay. It's okay. He's friendly. No, he's not. He's friendly to you and only you. So I just think we ought to spend a little time on that. And I know that, you know, if we've had a crash or an accident or a burglary or something, you know, of course, those things are a lot more important. But come on, guys. I do see policemen driving around, and there are dogs at our park that are off leash all the time, and they just drive on by. I never see anything done. So anyway, thanks. Appreciate your time.
Okay, Andreas Hellstrand, live in North Ogden. Unfortunately, my wife did not authorize me to offer cake, so I can't make that same promise. So over the last few months, maybe year, I've been listening in and watching some of the council meetings and subcommittee meetings. And so I took some notes, and specifically related to the road discussion you guys, I think, are having today, part of the budget for this next year. And so I learned from some of these meetings that some 10 years ago, 2016, 2017, that there was a transportation utility fee of $3, and it was collected, and it was up to, I think, $1.2 million. And then there was some legal ruling that decided that that's a tax. So per the mayor's recommendation, that was discontinued, and it was just kind of rolled into property taxes. So when that was made, my understanding is that that was not earmarked. So the $3, $1.2 million fee just kind of was adapted into whatever the city wanted to spend it on. So as you guys now are kind of going through the same scenario where we need to raise more money for transportation and roads, I think you guys need to consider, how do you earmark that? I think it's misleading to the citizens to say you're going to raise taxes, in this case 30 to 40%, and then next year when a new council is in place, that may disappear and just go into something else. I understand maybe a new council, but to me it's I'm a little bit surprised that there's no established, or there's no plan to establish goals and targets of how you intend to address multi-year projects. Not to say that that can change, of course, but I think that needs to be part of going forward in the future for this council, for some people maybe in the audience that are running for council or running for mayor. I think there needs to be some discussion. How do we make sure that this property tax increase doesn't go away and are being used for non-intended purpose? Okay. So for me, whether it's a transportation utility fee or a tax, doesn't matter to me. But if I'm gonna spend more money, I want to make sure that that's earmarked for that purpose. And if it's not, if that's going to be changed, that ought to come back in front of the public again and say, this 30 to 40% increase, we're going to change the allocation of that. And then also, I guess part of this discussion today is compensation package for the city staff. And I haven't had too much interaction with city staff, but every time I do, it's very positive. Of course, the city wants to protect its employees and make sure they stay. But in today's environment, I think about 10% increase to some positions, that to me is pretty steep. And I think it's steep for any position that's been hired within the last year or so, maybe in 6 months, because if you were hired within the last 6 months, the assumption is you were hired to a market rate. And if we now propose 10% increase to these recently hired positions, I'm not quite sure if that's warranted. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it looks like most everyone in the room has commented. We do have an online comment from Susan Kilborn. We will open it up to her.
Happy Tuesday evening to North Ogden. First of all,
Looks like you're unmuted, Susan.
oh, I thought I unmuted. Can you hear me now?
And either we have audio issues on our end or you have it on your end. We can see the little microphone thing moving, but no words yet from you.
I am unmuted.
Keep chit-chatting so we can hear you if you are talking.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. We can hear you now.
You made me laugh. Sorry. Anyway, good evening. First of all, contemporaneously, I would like to thank the gentleman who stepped forward and so well described that North Ogden City does have a problem with unleashed dogs. And believe me, twice I've been the recipient of a couple of dog bites in the legs. I have 2 little ones, and it's kind of hard to grab both of them when you're a feisty old lady like me. I can kick well, but I don't like to kick dogs. And I have kind of a solution that I'd like the city to consider, and I'm going to throw it out there. Have you ever thought most of the time I see this happening after 7 o'clock or after 5 o'clock when people think there is no animal control officer. I was wondering if maybe there could be like a split shift for animal control because there's a preponderance of them out, at least in my area, after people get off work. So I'll throw that out there. Second of all, as we all know, last Friday was the deadline for individuals to file for the mayoral and 2 city council vacancies. And I want to very much thank the individuals who stepped up to the plate and are willing to make the commitment to our city and do their civic duty at a time when we really, really have some tough issues ahead of us. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm giving you applause right now. And I am looking forward to a nice, clean, energetic time for you all to prepare and be ready to answer the questions that I know our citizens are going to have. But thank you from the bottom of my heart. I so much appreciate civic responsibility. And that's all I have tonight. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any more public comments? Okay, well, we will go ahead and move on to agenda item number 5. This is a discussion and/or action to approve ordinance 2025-12, adopting compensation increases for municipal officers. Presenter is John Call, City Manager.
Thank you, Councilmember Delpaz. So, Council, this is a new thing. It's the second year we've done this, but the state passed a law last year that said we need to, for all municipal executive officers, adopt a compensation schedule for them before you adopt a budget or at the same meeting you adopt a budget. And so this is required by state law. My understanding is this happened because a city in Utah County, I actually don't know which one, so I'm not just saying I don't know who it is, but had provided a compensation package to one or more of their employees that include bonuses, and the residents didn't realize that there would be large bonuses given to employees. In our city, we don't do that. And so you'll notice on the schedule, and I'll put it up here on the screen for you, what you do is it's important to show that in our city, we don't do any bonus increases. We don't have any deferred money increases. Increase is spelled incorrectly. We will fix that before we publish it. And then we're just supposed to disclose those 4 things. What's the salary range increase? Are there any vehicle stipend increases? Are there any bonus increases or any deferred income increases? In our city, the only benefit we offer outside of salary and the normal benefits is there are some individuals who are provided a vehicle or a stipend, and neither of those are showing an increase this year as far as getting any additional money or anything. And then for our city, last year we actually gave a percentage of what the individuals were getting as an increase. This year, we've actually showed what the increase is to the mid-range that was completed by the market study. So even though, for example, this one says there was a 13% increase in the range, it doesn't mean that individual's getting a 13% increase. What it means is that this number, 79,000, is 13% higher than this number. And so our goal, as you know, as a city is to make sure people are between the low range and the high range, with the goal of getting them to the mid-range. But in our current plan, 13% would be outside of the range of what we have projected for any positions. The max in our budget is 10%. And there's other things that come into the factor of this is how long they've been in the job, to the gentleman's comment before, and what other skills they bring, or maybe some skills they still might have to learn. So we have Some department heads that are closer to the low range, some department heads that are right around the mid range, and then we really don't shoot for the high range on department heads, because and this is my philosophy, is that we expect our department heads to function as really good department heads, and the expectation is that's kind of mid-pack, and that we haven't seen a need to attract talent beyond what we have by trying to reach to these higher ranges. So pretty much everyone is going to be at or below this mid-range number for their positions, just for a point of reference. And then in our city, we do have some that have multiple jobs. So our assistant city manager is also our public works director. And so we just kind of blend those two ranges together and make sure that they fall in the scope of that. No, yeah. I don't know, Dave, do you want both? Does that sound good? No, he doesn't. But so the way this goes is there'll be a public hearing so that those in the room and online and others can provide comments on this. And then we'll close the public hearing and you'll take a vote. And then we'll move on. So that's the normal process for this. Any questions about these?
I just had a question. So the law is asking us to adopt the increases and not the specific salary that we are putting to a certain name.
Yeah, it doesn't say the actual salary. It says the increase. And so we kind of felt like the range was a better tool, because that's really kind of the parameters. And then with department heads, the way our system works and our policy is, even though department heads don't answer to the city council, their hiring, firing, and really their compensation has to be approved by the city council. So if there was going to be an increase, that would come back to the council for an approval, as opposed to the normal city employees, which can, if they're in their range and they get a certification or whatever, then they would just get that increase as a matter of course that myself and the department head would approve.
Thank you.
Is it true that I'm just thinking through what I've seen in the numbers? Is it true that the department heads are probably in some situations, a slightly lower percentage increase than a lot of the other employees that are underneath them? As in, individuals that work for them might be getting higher increases, or just does it depend?
It depends. So I would say the majority of the individuals that would fall under this list, it's across the board. There are those that are getting close to 10%, and then there are some that are getting closer to 3 or 4%, just based on where they're at in the scale. And so if we can provide that to the council. We typically don't try and share that in the public meeting. It is all public information, but we try to give the department heads a little bit of cover, just like we do with all the other employees. But it's kind of it kind of varies, just like it does for most employees. Just kind of up and down between that. The council as the budget is presented, is basically a 3% to a 10% raise this year based on merit. So if someone's an underperformer, they don't get, the maximum raise. And then so much of it has to do with how many years they've been in their job and how many years we think it takes to master that job, on how quick they can get to that mid-range position. So
with a high merit situation, they would most likely be towards the top of this mid-range increase that's listed here.
Yeah, so they would be in this column. Oh, it doesn't let you just pick the column, but they'd be in this mid-range column for the high performers. And in my opinion, I don't believe we have department heads that are low performers. We do have a few that are still learning their job. And what I mean is that they were hired, to the gentleman's point, as maybe the finance director in the less than 6 months ago. So they are not going to be at the mid-range point, and they're not getting a move to that mid-range point, but they are within the range, the low to high range. And as they get time with the city and more experience, they'll move into that higher. But we also have a few positions where someone may not, they might have been with the city and grew into a position, but maybe they don't have the degree it requires. And so we would discount the midpoint to match the skill set they have and work with them on either achieving that or finding other ways to grow more into that position and get to that midpoint. So.
Okay, great. Councilwoman Watson?
Thanks. I just wanted to bring up a point for those who may not have heard us in previous discussions when we've talked about this. This market study is a pretty intense study, and we've learned how it works and how it compares to other cities. And the idea is we don't want to lose employees to other cities who will pay more. And so we're trying to just keep up. We're not trying to set the bar or set the rates for other cities to follow, but we're just trying to more keep up so that we don't lose employees, because all the training and time lost is expensive. And so for those who haven't heard, I feel like that's an important part of this discussion.
Any other discussion before we open it up for a public hearing? John, do we have to have a motion for public hearing?
Just to close.
Okay, so we are going to start our public hearing in regards to adopting compensation increases for municipal officers. And can you double check online as well, John?
Reed Miller, North Ogden. Hey, I just want to clarify. According to the schedule up here, does John, you mentioned that there was a 3 to 10% increase for this year. Now, does that mean 3% more than what that schedule says?
No, it would be, it would fall in that range. So that 3 to 10% falls in between this new low range and the new high range.
High range.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like everyone has had a chance to speak at the public hearing, so we will look for a motion to end our public hearing on this.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we are going to close our public hearing on this. I guess at this point, if there is further discussion, we can do that. Otherwise, I think we are looking for a motion. And by the way, it is ordinance 2025-12.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve ordinance 2025-12 adopting compensation increases for municipal officers.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Severing and a second by Councilman Pulver. This is going to be a roll call vote. I guess I didn't explain this as Mayor Berube usually does, but we are going to start in order of furthest away from me. So it's going to be Councilman Pulver working our way over to myself. How
Yes.
do you vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that concludes that agenda item. That motion passes. Ordinance 2025-12. Our next item on the agenda is item number 6, which is discussion and/or action to consider adopting ordinance 2025-13, adopting the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. John Call, our city manager, is going to be our presenter. I imagine this will be a lengthy discussion because we have a lot to hash out.
So council, as you've all attended the budget meetings, this is kind of the latest version of the document that's been presented. What usually happens in this discussion at this point in our fiscal year is that the council really focuses on, are we doing truth in taxation? And if we are moving forward with the truth in taxation process, then that's why there's a resolution attached that we would provide a tax rate that would then be adopted, and then that would become part of the official notice that's mailed out to all the individuals in the city and they know what's coming. They get their public hearing notices, and they can then participate at a public hearing in August. What is a little unusual this year is typically by this time we have what's called the certified tax rate that would let us know whether property values have gone up or down in the city, and how that impacts our tax rate. Because as property values go up, our tax rate actually goes down, so that we get the same revenue each year for the same number of houses, and the only growth we get would typically be from new structures that were constructed. In our situation this year, because we don't have that number, because there's been some technical difficulties at the county and state level on getting their systems to talk to each other, we don't have a certified tax rate for you to consider. However, we do still have the ability to talk about, should we increase taxes to help pay for some of the things we've talked about. In this budget that's presented in front of you tonight, there has always been a programmed tax increase of about 3.5%. That was about $100,000 of increased revenue, with another $67,000 in growth funds from new structures, just based on what we think will enter the rolls. And then what the council's talked about was, should there be an additional $1.2 million raised to help fund road projects. And I think that'll be a big part of the conversation tonight. And so I think for the ease of the discussion, there's a couple ways to approach it. One is to talk about revenues and really hash that out, and then talk about expenses. Or I think it might be easier if we maybe address questions about expenses first, knowing that revenues is probably going to be a larger discussion, because it's not just property taxes that impact our budget, as you know. It's also sales tax dollars, and there's fees, and there's all sorts of things that kind of get wrapped up into the roughly $10 million that we get in revenue every year. And so I think it might be good to start talking about first, just does the council have any questions about expenses, or any ideas on other things that we could address to maybe trim some more fat out of the budget? I think the budget subcommittee has done a really good job of doing that. And so I think that there's a process, and this is what I'm suggesting is a little unique, because sometimes what we do is, like, I would present and then the public would comment and then the council would weigh in. And I think it might be helpful to kind of compartmentalize and maybe talk about expenses as a council, then do the public hearing, and then talk about revenues, because I think most people in their comments can comment on revenues, but I think it'd be good for them to maybe hear a little bit about expenses from the council before public comments are made, just because of the way it might help the conversation flow. But we can just do it the traditional way, where we could just march through all of it and open it up and see how it goes. So any direction from the council on how you'd like to proceed?
John, I'm looking for any help, as this is a new role for me. So I trust your guidance. I think if we talk about the expenses first, and then open it up to public hearing, and then continue on with discussion after, I feel okay about that, unless anyone else feels strongly otherwise. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. So from the staff report, these are the biggest changes in the budget. It doesn't mean, obviously, this isn't all the expenses, but we're going to jump down to this line, this 1038,900 line, because that is where we start talking about expenses. Everything above that is a revenue. So this 252, 289 is, I'm calling it an expense, because we are taking money out of fund balance and spending it during this year. So we currently have about $2.7 million in our fund balance, which is our rainy day fund that we use when we need to. So the question on this line will be, is this money that we need to use this year, or is there another way to either reduce expenses or raise revenues? Some of the reasons why these dollar amounts have come up is that our insurance costs have increased significantly. So we had our workers' compensation claims increased over the past year because of some injuries some of our employees experienced at work. The majority of those have actually been chasing bad guys, bad people. And so some of those you're not able to really manage that other than maybe some additional training on how to climb a fence or how to tackle someone to the ground. But sometimes in those situations, things just happen. And so a good chunk of that has been part of that. The other part of this increase is that last year we had left out about $40,000 of our insurance budget line. And so even though we spent the money, we didn't budget for it. And so it shows up this year as a $140,000 increase because 40,000 of it wasn't in the budget last year and it should have been. So that's kind of a significant portion for this discussion and something that in a lot of ways is out of our hands, but isn't. We've always been a fairly safe city as far as our employees go. In these last couple of years, or this last year, they call it the E-mod. Our number has moved to where we're about on par with cities of our size. Before we were getting about a pretty significant discount. We were in the let's just say the top 30% of cities. So we were in the kind of in the bottom range of those that were getting claims. And so that's why we had such a good rate, and it's gone up because of a few larger claims. But that's not abnormal. The insurance market is changing significantly. So I should have started this way. 40,000 of it is the miscalculation from last year. About half of the remaining, the 50,000, is the increase in workers' compensation, and the other half is coming from just the general liability of the city with some increases in equipment. So we've upgraded our dump truck, for example, and a brand new dump truck that we bought last year is more expensive to insure than the 20-year-old dump truck just because of the value. But then also police insurance liability has gone up just across the nation, and Utah is shielded a little bit, but we're not entirely immune from it. So those are the big increases to the insurance. The transfer to the CIP of the almost 1.2 is the from property tax to roads that we've talked about. We show a decrease in our Cherry Days revenues because we're not planning on selling tickets because we're not doing a carnival. And so with that, there's a decrease in the expenses in Cherry Days. So instead of spending the last year, the private group that's running Cherry Days spent about $130,000 and brought in about $130,000. This year, we're going to spend around $55,000 to $60,000 and hopefully bring in about $30,000 to $35,000, which is the way it used to be when we would do this as a city. And I forgot to mention that part of that $130,000 from the citizens last year was $25,000 from the city. So we're back on par. We're spending about the same amount of money that we normally would as far as out of pocket. It's just that we're not getting the type of ticket sales revenues they got from like the bounce houses and things they've done in the past couple of years. Yeah, the carnival. Yeah. So it's really, they kind of offset, but I just think it's important to identify, since it's such a large number, that it's a decrease with an offsetting decrease in expenses. The $1 million that we took out from the transportation utility fee, this was based on that discussion on sales tax or property tax versus utility fee. So that's just showing what the document in front of you shows tonight. We increased a grant we're getting from the Weber County to buy some corridor preservation for Mountain Road alignment. Specifically, we're focusing on the alignment from 3100 up to the Cove. Some of that is currently paved. Some of it's being paved this year. But there's a section in between there that is not paved. And we plan on coming back to you with agreements from those property owners that if we buy this section of the road from them, they will put the road in within a certain time frame. And that will help in connecting the cove down to Mountain Road and down to 1050 so that we've got extra fire access up and down the hill. This 1.174 million is coming in again just because the way the money moves, capital project money moves around several times. It's the same dollars. It's not new dollars. It's the same dollars, just showing up in the budget for the third time. This transfer from RDA to capital projects has been increased because some of those projects that we had planned on won't be done by July, so they'll move into next fiscal year. And you'll see this again in 2 weeks, where we're going to bring a list of here's all the capital projects that we've started and won't be done by July. So we're going to be moving them we're going to have them in both years, understanding that we're not actually increasing the budget for the project. We're just making sure that depending on when the invoices come in, we've got it budgeted to pay those off as they come in.
Question on that.
Yeah.
Does that number include grants that were given to some of the businesses that we decided on, or is that 337,000 only all of the internal North Ogden RDA projects?
This is specifically tied to the money for the it's Bicentennial and also the Aquatic Center, the playground upgrade. So it's those two. The money for the grant projects is actually in this budget year and in next budget year, just because we haven't spent it. And just that same concept where we have some who have started moving forward with their projects, and they may spend their money on June 20th and ask us for it. But it's the same concept, but it's just a different pool of the same money. In the capital fund project, as I was balancing it out, there was $7,200 we didn't have to use as fund balance, and so I just took it out. And now we've added. We thought again the playground at the pool would be done before the season started. It's getting bumped to the end of the year, so we had to move the money again from the current year to next year. McGriff Park, we took out the upgrade to the bathrooms up there in conversation because we weren't adding enough money into our capital and projects fund to offset all the expenses. And so because the 300,000 wasn't being injected in the budget as proposed, we took out this project to help make sure that capital projects didn't end up underwater. Here's the fourth time that road money shows up again. As it hops around the system, it's still the same money. It's still the 1.2 million roughly. And again, you can see here's this expense for the Mountain Road Corridor Preservation Project that's tied to this income. The difference between these two numbers is the city's matching grant of 10%.
Just FYI, in the budget that you have on there, instead it says Mountain Road, it says Monroe Boulevard. So that was confusing.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it was noted that in the budget it said Monroe instead of Mountain Road, so that was confusing me. So
yeah, so when we bring it back in August, we need to add a new GL for Mountain Road Corridor, and we'll do that.
Okay, thanks.
For August, yeah. The movement of the previously the 24,000 for Placer AI was in the CDA budget, and we've moved it to the RDA budget, just because it helped to it works better with the RDA goals as opposed to CDA goals. And then this $360,000 was I had put a number into the budget before the tentative budget. And so this was just a correcting error. It's not actually changing the amount of money in the program. It had balanced. It had been moved up to 1.5 million, and we had to move it back down to 1.24. That was the original amount that was budgeted. Cassell would not let me back it out, so it's just an entry to make it balance like it's supposed to. This is that. It's the Turn Lane project that won't be done this year, so we're moving it into next year. And then here's that $24,000 that was offset moving out of the CDA and into the RDA. So those are the big changes, but that's not every expense in the books. So are there other questions or?
I just wanted to point out, I'm pretty sure the turn lane project was RDA funded, correct?
Correct, yeah. So Fund 65 is the RDA.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the RDA sends it to capital projects and then it's spent out of capital projects. So this 115 is showing up in this 337 up here. So
Got
it's the money moves around.
Hey, I see that Councilwoman Watson has some thoughts.
I just was hoping, John, you could provide us after these changes that are listed, assuming they all go through, where would we stand on our capital project fund or our CIP fund? What range is that in the right range? And then also where would our fund balance range be? And that's our rainy day fund, right? So is that within the range that we have previously decided?
Yeah, so in our capital improvement fund, I'm gonna switch here and then I'm gonna go grab the spreadsheet, but we have a running total for over 5 years that shows as our balance moves. And it will be in that range. As far as there's still the $1 million, that's kind of our conditional capital project rainy day fund. And then our balance, I don't have it off the top of my head here, so let me see if I can find it really quick. But our balance is acceptable with what we've planned in our 5-year capital project plan. And so we would recommend that we're in range, meaning our safety money is still there and we haven't blown the budget. That's part of the reason we took the McGriff project out, is to make sure that we weren't killing that balance that we have programmed for future years.
So along those lines, every year previously, we have always contributed to CIP, but we're not this year. And is it because this balance is acceptable, like you said, in a way that we're not going to slow down? Or is this just some stark new change that we're not all of a sudden contributing?
Currently, the budget does not show that, right?
Right. Changes could happen today.
Yes.
It's true. I'm just asking in the current setup here, you said the balance is acceptable. And I'm just curious, have we always contributed to CIP fund every year? And now all of a sudden we're making this stark change to not? And is that staff recommendation or is that because, explain that more?
So the logic or the reason that we've ended up not doing the contribution is just because the other expenses have gone up so high, and the temperature of the recommendation is that if we're raising property taxes, that it be spent on roads, which would be capital projects. And so instead of parking it for a year and then spending it the next year on roads, we're essentially spending it the year we raise it. And so it's not a concept that we've really talked about, but in all of the roads are spent out of capital improvements. And so if we parked $300,000 for 12 months and then spent it next year, it's probably less effective than spending it $300,000 this year on roads and raising property taxes, for example, to 1.2 million instead of 1.4 million. So, or 1.5. Math is hard. And so it's conceptually we're injecting significantly more money into capital, but we're not saving for the future, right? Because we're doing the projects today that we should have done 3 years ago.
Well, and have we not previously said that the roads is this huge task that we can't take on fast enough? And the only reason we have the budget that we do towards roads is because that's as fast as we can fix the roads. And so if we were able to fix more next year than we are this year, then that number would go higher, much higher. And then how would we ever get back to CIP, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, so in that is a good question that it's going to be a hard one to answer, because the only way to get to be injecting more money into CIP that we're not spending is to spend less on projects or collect more. And in the past, the majority of the money that we've injected into CIP has come from under expenditures in the general fund. So police, admin, streets, those have not spent every dollar they were allotted for the year. And then property and sales tax have come in higher than we budgeted. And so 2 years ago, for example, we actually collected, or we put in $800,000 into CIP because we had programmed 3 and sales tax came in so high and expenses came in low that we had another 500,000 that we put into capital projects to just make sure that we didn't exceed our general fund balance limit. So that's kind of a long answer, but the reality is in the past 6 years, we have put more money into CIP than we ever have in the past. The difference this year is that we're not saving that 300,000 for a future project. We're spending that 300,000 this year, and that's a little bit of a shift from what we used to do.
If there is money left over, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to dominate. If there is money left over at the end of this year with revenue or unspent money, then would that go straight to roads or to CIP?
So the way that it's currently set in the budget is it goes to the general fund balance first, and then we have enough room in the budget that we could make a transfer to CIP, but it's going to land in one of those 2 funds.
But usually when you put something in CIP, you have it's earmarked for something. So it's not just thrown in there for something.
So, and here's the sheet that we were talking about. So we have like projects programmed out to 2031, and then at the bottom, it gives, let's see, this is not updated. So, but I'll show you on water because it actually is correct. I think I grabbed the wrong sheet because Dave's got one that is updated. But what it does is it goes through all the projects and then the expenses that we expect. Then it shows the revenues that we have coming in, then shows our fund balance. So you can see that we've got a very healthy water fund balance, and then we go and we spend a bunch of money and it drops down to a level. And this is the meter program. And the booster station. And so we spend a bunch of money this year, so our balance drops, but it still ends up in a level where we have a cushion. And then as more money comes in, you can see that that balance starts to slowly grow again, even though we're doing projects. And so that's the goal is to kind of save, do those big projects, get it down to a level that we can still survive on, and then grow it again as we do more projects. And in the general fund with our capital improvement fund budget, that's a little bit harder to do because that is the area where we get the most pressure on our revenues and expenses. Sales tax, it makes about, let's just call it half of our budget for revenue, and it can be unpredictable. We've had a lot of success with it over the years, but it's not, there's no good way to really guess what it's going to be. So.
And I'm sorry, did I miss, have you said where we are at with our rainy day fund balance?
So about 2.7 million is kind of the projected at the end of this year.
Is that within that percentage range that we're shooting for?
Yeah. So again, our expenditures is about $10 million. So it's about 27% of our budget. And the state mandates, we always have to have 5% and we can't have more than 35. And as a city, our goal has typically been about 25%. So.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Severin.
Yeah, John, so I'm just a little confused. In the truth in taxation, it says if the council wishes to move forward with the truth in taxation process, we will need to adopt a rate based on the numbers provided to us by the state at the beginning of next week. So will you explain that just so I'm a little bit more clear with that too?
So the county goes out and reassesses, in theory, the value of every single structure and piece of land in the county. And based on that value, they then tell the city how much our land value of our residents has grown or shrunk over the year. And then they apply what's called a certified tax rate to that number. So for simplicity, let's say the city gets 10% of the property tax goes to the city, and we have $100 million of land assets that are taxed. So we get $10 million, we get 10% of that value. So we'd end up with 10 million is the wrong number because that's the value, but it's a 10%. I think it ended up being $100,000 of that value. If the value of the land goes to $110 million the next year, we still get $100,000. But what happens is the certified tax rate goes down so that we still get $100,000, and it's based on the value. So the 110 million gets times by a smaller number to give us 100,000. That certified tax rate is the number we then compare our revenues against. And if we're doing truth in taxation, it means we are adopting a number that's higher or lower than that certified tax rate. So if we want to generate more revenues than the natural growth of new structures brings to the city, we need to increase our tax rate or maintain it so that we capture the value in the land that's increased and possibly more. So most people in the city don't understand taxes. Most people don't realize that the city doesn't get 100% of what they write to the county, right? And so it's a little confusing, but the reason that email is even more confusing is that county has not given us any numbers yet that we can rely on, and we're supposed to adopt that new number by June 22nd, except there's a provision in state code that says if the county hasn't given you the number, you have 14 days from when they do give you the number to adopt the tax rate. I talked with the assessor's office this morning. Their plan is to have the number here soon. They didn't say when, but we're hoping to adopt that tax rate at June 24th at the latest. And I would suggest if we don't have the numbers from the county, we can still do kind of a guesstimate on what we think the rate will be and adopt something, because I don't think the state's going to let us go outside of June without adopting something.
So do we need, because back on the packet, question for council, does the council want to move forward? Obviously, we can't make a decision unless we have the information from the county, but we can say, yes, we would like to continue toward that direction.
So
That's all you need tonight.
Well, so what I really need from the council tonight is how much money would you like to generate? How much additional money would you like? Because once we know that number, then we can bring you back a tax rate number that will generate that much money.
Okay.
And that conversation is going to hinge on, at the work session, 3 of the 5 council members said property tax as opposed to transportation utility fee. As we talked about last week, that's not final until the council votes on the tax rate.
Okay.
But regardless, we do anticipate, as I mentioned, the tax rate, the budget currently includes a 3.5% tax rate increase. And so the staff is recommending the truth in taxation process regardless of the route we go on roads.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that is kind of nagging at me is that we're planning on not putting the $300,000 into the CIP. I just have this feeling that if we quit this year, it's like potentially giving up for the next few years, because we're going to get used to it, and it's definitely the easier road in a way, because we don't have to find a way to produce more revenues. But at the same time, it just feels like to me, if we forget it, or if we don't do it this year, it's highly likely or possible for it to happen next year as well. The other thing that is, and I don't want to steal any of Councilman Pulver's thunder, because I know he has some thoughts, but and I'm not speaking for him, but I know that another thing that is kind of eating away at me as well is that we are taking from the rainy day funds to produce that $200 and some odd thousand. And it's just something that I haven't recalled doing in the last few years. And so, yeah, I'm worried about that. So I just want to have some discussion on that as a council to see how everyone's feeling about that. See where we might be trending. I did go back and listen to the Citizen Budget Committee after last week's meeting. That's one thing that I said I wanted to do, because I wanted to get a feel more for the conversation that was happening there. One thing that stood out to me that I don't know was conveyed all that much by Mayor Berube at the last meeting was he was mentioning in that citizen budget committee that he was starting to lean towards a fee, a transportation utility fee. And if I remember correctly, part of the reason that he was starting to lean in that direction, he wasn't making a full commitment, but he was starting to say that he was leaning that way. And I can't remember if it was in the meeting or if this was just in a one-off conversation with him, but he is talking about the ability to help people out with, some sort of program to either waive or reduce that transportation utility fee burden on individuals that might be in a fixed income. And when I started hearing things discussed in that way, it started to make a lot of sense. And so that's something that I'm thinking about a lot is maybe we could go that route. And the thing that is enticing to me is I didn't get a feeling that if we do $1.2 million in property taxes towards roads, I didn't get a lot of warm fuzzies that we would absolutely be able to track that money for sure. I know there was the idea of doing a restricted fund and tracking it that way, but my impression from conversations, whether it was in our public meetings or just with others, is that transportation utility fee is going to be a lot easier to track. And there's no way we could fudge that number. It's absolutely going to be used for roads no matter what. And so that started to sound more and more enticing. So I just wanted to get more thoughts from everyone on that.
Just a couple of quick thoughts that I'm not sure I've brought up before. The other nice thing that I like about the fee is, and maybe this has been said, sorry if I'm repeating, but I like that we can say, oh, let's hold off on this for a little bit and just adjust the number without taking away the earmark, without taking away the funds that are already in there. It's able to be flexible, which I like. And, this isn't very scientific or I don't know. It sounds silly, but to me, like what I keep going back to on the fee versus tax is the fact that my utility bill, I think maybe it was Chris who said this previously, Councilman Pulver to me, but the fact that your utility bill will go from $95 or $98 to $110 or something, that may not be as noticeable as if your tax rate for the property tax rate has a drastic change, even though it's the same amount of money and no tricks here or anything, but I just feel like what the public will be able to easily more manage and accept everything. The fact is right now, everything is raising in cost and it's impossible to keep up with without doing something about it. But in my opinion, my utility bill that I get every month, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it went up 10% or something, right? So those are just my thoughts on that.
Any other thoughts?
Sure. I guess the big thing is a tax is a tax, and somebody said that, I can't remember who, but I think the biggest thing on this whole thing is how do you implement something to make sure that the funds stay where they're supposed to be? And I think that was there's many different pros and cons, and I try to do that. How. And to me, you also want to prioritize your pros and cons. And to me, the best part of a fee is the fact that you can waive it for people that need to have it waived. And I know there's a tax program, but that's not automatic. You can call your city and say, "Hey, here's my tax form. I obviously can, what can you do for me?" And sure, And I think the other part of it is that if we do the study, that's going to drastically change some of the things that we're talking about, that it won't be a flat. That was the other thing, is that with the property tax, it wasn't flat across, it was based on whatever your property tax was, which to me is, I'll say unfair, but it's definitely not the way that people use roads. just because, you know, somebody's house is worth more than somebody else's, it doesn't mean that shouldn't mean then have to pay more for roads. You know, what if a person that is living on Social Security, just because their house is more expensive than a family of, you know, quite a few that has 10 cars, making it up, pays less than she does? It makes no sense. So, I just a lot of ranting there, but I think the biggest thing, and Councilman Watson said, Council Member Watson said it, that it is more dynamic. It's more agile. Property tax, again, it takes a full process. I mean, sure, it comes in one bunch, January, February timeframe, but at the same time, what if we say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to just let the roads go to gravel. Gravel's more cool. But I don't think we're going to do that, but it's, you know, we can turn off the fee right away for some crazy reason. But, and I think somebody else, we were talking about it too. And believe me, we've already been talking about plans, because it's not just what we're doing this year. It has to be what we're doing the next year and the next year after that, because roads is a big chunk, is a big elephant, and we have to figure out how to take bites out of it to figure it out. And so that is in work, a full plan. At least I hope so. But I already try to give you some thoughts on that. But anyways, sorry, I'm ranting, but
I was just going to say that, can you hear me back there, Sandy? Excuse me. Good. You know, I'm with Councilman Dalpass. I'm kind of a little apprehensive about not putting that $300,000 away. You know, I keep looking at Barker Park, just continue to sit there. And so there was this little hope that we were going to, even though it's an incredible expense, and I don't mean incredible by, I mean incredibly expensive. I just think that I find myself believing the same thing as Councilman Dalpass, and that is that if we don't put it in this year, that it's going to disappear next year. And we may not get that back anytime soon. My second thought on property taxes versus the transportation utility fee, I'm very much the kind of individual that I don't like things to look like they're hidden. So there's a part of me that says transportation utility fee, but it's really a tax. I would prefer to be very open. I don't know if I like the idea of raising property taxes and also putting on a transportation utility fee. And so for me, it can't necessarily be one or the other, but if possible, we'd like to make sure that it is earmarked if it gets included into property taxes. Just my thoughts.
Okay. One thing I think we might want to talk about more, which was brought up, I think this was Councilman Pulver that really initiated this discussion, is the amount that is quote unquote left over at the end of the year, and where that goes exactly. It sounds like John had confirmed that in most recent years, when there was an overage based on sales taxes coming in higher or whatever it might be, that that has been put into the capital improvement fund. I think we need to, you know, have a discussion around that. Is that the proper place, or is the proper place whenever we come in higher than expected that it goes towards roads? I think that we just need to figure that out. I don't recall vividly having, you know, a end of year number over the past few years and making that decision. I'm guessing that we trusted staff to make that decision. And honestly, that decision to put the overage into capital improvement funds sounds wise to me, but I do think it's worth a conversation here. I mean, are there thoughts? Because we're essentially, by the study that we just got, we're approximately $100 million short on what we need to get our roads completely up to snuff. And so my natural tendency or thought is to put any overage each year because there was extra sales tax or because there was whatever extra revenues, that it automatically goes to roads because that number is so daunting and seemingly insurmountable. So I don't know, is there any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think it's buried. I had, Ryan, Councilman Barker basically said, it's in the audit report. Well, it's in the audit report, but you got to go find it. And so I did. And if you'd go back, I mean, last year through fiscal 2024, which goes to June 30th, and then you go back, last year was the most close. It was only 2,700, but the previous to that previous year was almost 946. Previous year before that was 529, 146. So you can kind of see, yeah, there's some, the staff does a really good job. And like you said, sometimes the taxes, whatever it is, comes in higher than what we budgeted. And that's kind of what I think we're going to talk about later, is the revenue part of it, which I think should be tweaked. But the decision, I think really staff understands that, we need to keep a certain percentage, which is what we said in general fund for a rainy day. And then, like John said, anything beyond that goes into CIP, because that's really the only way you can shift things around so that you're not violating one policy or another. So I think it's already being done. Do we physically have to say that? I don't know. I don't think so, but.
I'm curious as well, if we were to allocate it specifically, and then there wasn't a CIP contribution, then would that park bathroom ever get redone or fixed or whatever? So I'm wondering if CIP includes the roads, and it kind of could go either way because it's the same title.
So everything that's a capitalized asset in the city is technically built out of the capitalized project fund, with the exception of water, sewer, and storm lines. So everything else that the city owns comes out of there. So I think to your point you're trying to make is that 300,000, even though we're sending more money into capital improvement than we've ever in the past, we're also spending all of it on roads, and we're not squirreling anything away for the parks and the other general fund capital projects that need to be done in the future. And so, yeah, that's probably the better way to say it is, we might be injecting more money, but we're not now saving something for anything else. It's all going to roads.
And I feel like if we continue our 300K CIF capital improvement fund, CIF contribution this year, if we continue that, it almost ensures that something like the McGriff bathroom that was thrown off this year will, in my mind, absolutely happen next year, because we can't go back and say, well, we didn't put anything aside last year, and so it's not looking good again, because we will continue potentially to get caught in situations where maybe sales taxes aren't coming in as well as we thought they would or whatnot. But that's something that comes to my mind. It kind of ensures that the project because I'm not thinking that McGriff would come back if we put this 300K in this year, right? I mean, at this point.
Probably not. We've talked with them about, is there a way to extend the life of that building for at least 5 years? And so we've talked about, well, what if we just took out the porcelain toilets and redid the partitions? Does that extend the life by a little bit so that we don't have to have it in this year, and maybe even next year we can
Okay.
make it survive a little bit longer?
All right. Well, I think we've had a good discussion. Go ahead, Councilwoman Watson.
So back to your question previously about the rainy day fund and spending that. I just was curious to ask this insurance situation, how it kind of went through the roof, John, this year, because we had so many incidents at once, and that is happening. Is that something that we're saying counts as an emergency, and that's why it's coming from the rainy day fund? Or is it possible that those same series of events could happen again every year, and that would be a continual increase?
So it was put there because the council has to adopt a balanced budget for the general fund. The utility funds don't have to balance, but So it was parked there because as we talked about the revenues and what was coming in and the expenses going out, we had to make up that gap, and that was the only way to do it, unless the council decides to change the expenses or increase the revenues. So, and we haven't ever solidified a policy about what constitutes a rainy day. And maybe it's one of those things like, if you see a duck, it's a duck, right? And we haven't got to the point where it's hit that rainy day, but I would say back in 2008 was the last time we used money to help float. And that was during the housing crisis when sales tax and property tax just died. No growth, no building. And so we had to keep the city floating. And if you look back at those years, there was some use of fund balance in those years to help us get by.
But we're at a good, safe place, the 27%.
I mean, that is just in the eye of the beholder. So somebody might be more comfortable with 25% being in those coffers. Other people might be more comfortable with towards the maximum of 35%. So I mean, I get the feeling that 27% is a pretty comfortable number, but it is just depending on the way that you look at it. So John, I think we might be good to open up to the public hearing at this point, because certainly we want to hear from our residents, and that might give us some more ideas to think about. So we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing at this point. So if you're here for that, please show up here to the lectern or raise your hand online.
Good evening, Council. I'm Philip Swanson, North Ogden resident. I'm here representing the Citizen Budget Committee and also myself, since this is a public hearing. In our latest meeting, there were a number of topics that were discussed. One of them was the transportation utility fee, and I appreciate the very thorough discussion that you all have had tonight. It's nice to hear such a great discussion. The feeling of the committee, though it's not unanimous, is that a fee is the appropriate way to go, simply for the reason, and that's a flip from where it was initially. It was the opposite initially. The biggest concern, overriding concern, is the ability to track those funds and make sure that those funds are not forgotten. I think from each one of you tonight, we've heard about how easy it is to forget things and how easy it is for us to get into the routine of doing things. So far, this year in the budget season, we've talked about how the interest income that we've been having more of than we've ever had in the past has very quietly slipped into that general fund, and we're relying on it this year in order to have a balanced budget. That's not a smart thing to do because that interest income isn't going to be there. The point isn't to point out how it's not smart. It's to point out how easy it is for something like that because it's in the big nebulous general fund, how easy it is for those things to be forgotten. We use fees for many things that are technically taxes, right? Anytime we take something from the citizens, it's a tax. We have impact fees. We have planning fees. We have vehicle registration fees. We have emissions fees. The reason that those are all labeled fees is so that they can be easily tracked. And we know that the money that comes into those goes into, say, our B&C road funds that come from the state, right? Our vehicle registration fees come from, so some of that money goes to the B&C road funds that we come back, and it makes it very transparent, very easy, very linear. It's easy to track that those fees coming in for transportation purposes into the state transportation overall fund are then expended in a way that you would expect from a transportation fund versus what you would expect from a general fund. So our encouragement would be that you do it as a fee. There's the added bonuses that have been talked about tonight that you can waive it if you need to, you can reduce it if you need to. It's much more flexible when it's a fee. Excuse me. One of the suggestions that came out of the meeting, and this was initiated by Mayor Berube, and the committee agreed with it, was to perhaps consider increasing your estimate on sales tax funds. Councilmember Pulver has been very vocal through the budget season that he feels that we've been underestimating what based on historical performance, what our sales tax revenue might be. And I agree with Mayor Berube and the reasoning that in the thought process that he had behind it, and the committee agreed with it. And so our suggestion to you is that you change the sales tax estimate for next year from roughly that 2.3, 2.4% up to 5.5%. And then at the end of the year, rather than pre-programming in fund balance use now, at the end of the year, if we fall short, then you can always do a budget amendment, go into the fund balance and balance it out to whatever small amount that might be. Rather than pre-programming a loss now, we probably a little more reasonable for the sales tax estimates, increase that revenue. And then at the end of the year, if necessary, again, remembering our history, every year we come in pretty significantly, six figures or better, where we've underspent the budget. And so if we're doing that, instead of 254,000 having to come out of the rainy day fund, we know at the end of the year whether or not we're really in a rainy day and whether or not and how much we actually need. So that would be our recommendation there. If you are going to go the direction of a fee for the roads, we recommend roughly a 3.3%, which would be your $100,000 property tax increase that would then be married with the 67,000 that's coming from growth. One of the things to consider also is, and we feel like you might feel like we're beating a dead horse with this one. So sorry if that's how you feel. But the pool. With all of the discussions that we've had tonight, we've talked about critical infrastructure. We've talked about the need for roads. We've talked about a utility fee where for those that are on fixed incomes, we can eliminate that, we can reduce it. We can do those kinds of things where it's necessary. I ask you, is the need for lower cost at the pool rank the same in your mind as our need for roads? As our need for contribution to the capital improvement projects fund. In my mind, it does not. This is me speaking personally. I'm not speaking for the committee on this one. In my mind, it doesn't. The $100,000 subsidy, which is a pretty average subsidy for the pool, is asking Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, or whoever that's on a fixed income that will be applying for relief from road utility fees. We're forcing them to pay $15 a year so that somebody else can get a lower entry fee into the pool. The pool is wonderful. I love the pool. My kids used it when they were younger, been to it many times. I think it's an awesome thing. In my mind, though, it does not rank as high of a need in our city as do roads, as does critical infrastructure and those improvement projects that we need. So the committee, I'm switching back, putting my committee hat on now. We are recommending that you bite the bullet and raise the fees to $11.50 because every dollar that taxpayers subsidize entries at the pool is a dollar that isn't spent on roads, that isn't spent on other critical infrastructure within the city. We can live without the pool if we had to. We can't live without our roads and sidewalks and those other critical infrastructures that we have out there. So those are the comments that I have. Putting with my committee hat back on, any questions as far as the committee goes, council members?
Just that it was awesome. So I really appreciate this year. I mean, I think every year has been, I'll say fun, but it was fun with Sandy and Doug Anderson. But I think each year is a different set of eyeballs is always an awesome thing.
Yeah.
And I hope we get some people that are really, I'll say annoyed, but interested at the truth in taxation to say, hey, we got 2 more, 3 more, maybe 4 involved. And I mean, if that's a slow struggle, that's fine. I'll take 3 or 4 a year and slowly pull them into pop their eyeballs out of their sockets to go, holy cow, this is complicated. So anyway, good program.
Well, appreciate the conversation that you're having tonight about the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda Ashdown. I live in North Ogden. I disagree with Mr. Swanson. I think I just read an article not too long ago about sales tax, and the expectation is for it to go flat. To double what your expectation of sales tax. If you feel the need to increase it to maybe 3.5%, but don't, my suggestion is don't double it. I think that could be a huge problem. I don't think our economy is as stable as we want to think it is, and I think we need to be very careful with that. I know I'm very simplistic and very naive, but I do not understand if we have either the treasurer, the finance director, who's going to be in charge of this property tax increase, if they cannot take a piece of paper, which is what I do in my budget, which I know is so much smaller, and keep track of the increase of the property taxes to be used for the roads, then we need to go back to grade school. I'm sorry. I think there is no reason that we get that property tax, we get that increase, that it cannot be kept track of separate to know that that amount needs to be used for roads. My question on that is the only way we can do that at this point is that ordinance has to be changed. I don't know at what point you have to do that. If you accept, I don't understand about accepting the budget tonight. If you're doing a tax increase or a fee, doesn't that ordinance have to be changed before you decide you're going to do a tax increase? My last comment is you want to do a transportation fee. This is going to be really unpopular with people my age, and I feel bad for it, but it's how I feel. You're going to do a fee, and you're going to say, okay, a certain number of people who are on a fixed income, which is where I am, are not going to have to pay that fee. I don't know if my finances will fit in that where I won't have to pay the fee. So you're expecting to get $15 a month from every household, and then you're going to have a percentage of them that aren't going to have to pay that. You're not getting your $15 a month from every household. So you've cut yourself back on what you expect. So does that mean that next time you're going to say, oh, we've excused this percentage of people from paying this fee, and $15 a month wasn't enough, so we got to go up to 20 to get enough from those people who are going to pay to cover the ones who don't have to pay. I understand the point. If your house is more expensive, you pay more property taxes, but I mean, I honestly, if you do that fee and I financially am qualified to not have to pay for it, I'm not going to pay for it. But I will also tell you, your utility fees are $98. This is probably another thing I shouldn't say. Have very limited city utilities. You do that $15, my utilities have almost doubled. May not seem like a lot because it's $15, but doubling it seems like an awful lot. Thank you.
Kevin Burns, North Ogden. I feel like I've got my feelings across about the tax opposed to the fee piece. I am going to disagree with Citizen Swanson. Is that the name we go? Citizen Swanson. He talked about fees. He said we pay a number of fees, and those are the fees he listed. The one that really jumps out is like your car registration. Those are all fees that I can opt out of. If I don't want to pay it, I don't drive. If there's a fee at a pool and I don't want to pay the fee, I don't go to the pool. The fee you're proposing is one that I can't opt out of. And to me, that's the biggest difference between the tax and the fee. And I'm curious, is there a way to put some of that money, take it, from sales tax and where are the other revenues that can be used for the roads? Because there's more than just residents using our roads. It's more than just people that live in North Ogden that are using our roads. The Ogden Valley creates a lot of traffic through North Ogden as people head over the North Ogden Divide and get through North Ogden. Just curious is all. And when we talk about keeping track of that money as a tax, Mr. Call gave us a pretty good presentation tonight. He kept track of all the money. He kept track of which buckets of money he was working with 3 and 4 times and how often they were presented. So like Brenda said, if we can't keep track of it, we probably need to do something different. So thank you very much.
Sandy Cochran. I am a North Ogden resident. I'm going to agree with the last couple of people that came up. I also think it should be not a fee, but included in property tax. And through the entire budget committee process, that was my choice the whole time. I never changed my mind. This past weekend, my HOA had a meeting. We had some things to vote on, and people were talking about city council and what was going on here. And I said, well, there's this going on, there's going to be a property tax increase. There's probably going to be this roads fee. And I was explaining the process to them, and they were not happy. It's like, oh, so you're going to raise my taxes and then this on top of it. And no matter how you want to word it, it just looks like you're hitting them left and right. And I've heard a few comments. I don't know if they were said in a joking way. Some of them, I sort of smiled when I heard it, but some of them not. It's been expressed where you almost think people won't notice it, or it can just get slipped in there, and you better not do that. I mean, really, these are citizens of this city. They put you in the position you're in. How dare you not be upfront with them? If you're going to charge them a fee on their utility bill, tell them ahead of time you're going to do it and tell them what it's for. Otherwise, pardon my language, that's just chicken shit. Thanks.
Do we have any other comments for the public hearing or online? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to close our public hearing on the ordinance 2025-13, which is the budget for this year.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So John, I think we can move into some more conversation about this. I could use your help. What do you want to do now?
So there's 3 areas that I think we're talking about. And I would include, the comment about pool fees is relevant as well. But the ones that I'd kind of expected to talk about is sales tax. Our estimate is currently $4.896 million. Do you want to increase that or leave it the same or decrease it? And then the other 2 are transportation utility fee and property tax. And which route do you want to go? Tonight, the discussion, I think tonight, as I kind of recommended earlier, is that you won't be officially accepting or approving anything tonight, but this will form the document that you will see next meeting. And it's important to note that if we move forward with truth and taxation, the document that controls the budget through August is the tentative budget, unless the council adopts a new tentative budget or what you might call an operating budget for those 2 months. So that's the document that is on the website, says tentative budget on it. The things that have changed are the things that we talked about. And in those situations, anything that's kind of up in the air, we don't spend the money on. So a good example is we will spend money on insurance, but we won't go out and spend $1.2 million on roads because that's the expectation. But really tonight, what we need to decide or what I need you all to kind of give some direction on is, what do you want to do with sales tax, fees, transportation utility fee, and property tax, so that we can come back in 2 weeks with a good number for the property tax rate. Staff is recommending at least that 3.5% that we talked about, which was baked into the budget before we started talking about roads, up to, it would be pretty close to, I think, 38% increase if it was on a property tax. If you want to go the transportation utility fee route, then we would still recommend the 3.5% property tax plus the utility fee. And then in that conversation, we also need to talk about, I mean, you don't have to decide tonight, but if you wanted the property tax to also cover the 300 for the CIP and the 250 shortfall, then it'd be helpful to know, so that when we come back next week, we'll be talking about, is it a 50% or a 60% property tax increase, or how do you want all those numbers to blend together? Because it's a lot of moving little pieces.
I want to possibly start on the sales tax discussion. So there's a neighboring city that last year was about to implement a property tax increase. And my understanding of what happened with this neighboring city is they proposed it, truth in taxation happened, residents came out in force. They decided, well, we have some potential businesses that are going to add to our funding for next year, so we're calling it off. The difference I see with our approach in talking about sales tax, Councilman Pulver has pulled numbers from the last 5-ish years. I bet knowing him, he probably has the last 30 years somewhere tracked. But what I'm trying to say is, we are making a decision that is at least based on some sort of data. I think resident Brenda's comments about increasing up too much, that's something that we should talk about. We should definitely be concerned about taking our sales tax projection too high. But I think it might make sense to increase it higher than we had at the beginning of this budget, because we have learned through the data of the last 5-ish years that we're averaging about that 5%. Maybe we settle on 3.5 or 4% increase in sales tax this year, where we're acknowledging that there could be a dip in sales tax, but we're not projecting a major dip. Sales tax has been one of the most difficult things for me to wrap my head around in the last few years of being on the council. It is very difficult to pin down. And so at least we're going off of some data that has happened in the last 5 years, but my recommendation is to shave it down a little bit from that 5 or 5.5% number. But any thoughts?
Just been cultivating all these the good comments and what you're just talking about too is, so I kind of wrote down, because the big two things obviously that we're trying to figure out what to do with is the 252 from the using fund balance, and also the 300K that I think we all agree that we don't feel like we need, we should do it. And I guess the point is how do you, I would say, put it back in the budget, but have something that's dynamic enough. And I think John put some numbers in that one email, but to use the 300K or increase the sales tax revenue number to cover that 300K. And my reasoning is that you have 2 more months of sales tax numbers that you can get. And we have underestimated that sales tax number at least every year by at least 3 or 4%. And some years it's just a crap ton more. But that way, and you can still, even if the sales tax goes, you can still back out. Like somebody, I think you were saying that you can back it out. But I think if we pin the sales tax increase to that 300K, whatever the number comes to, I think that would be something that you're you're using it for, as opposed to just pulling a number out. That same vein, I'll throw this other one on there, use the property tax increase to cover that 252. So we don't, because that's technically something we should be paying for. So to me, that should be covered by property tax as opposed to sales tax. And I think I was kind of combining all those things in my one email, but how John broke it out, I think that works out pretty well to, if I'm looking at the math, and we still don't have the certified numbers, so that could change everything. But I really believe that the property tax should at least stay the same. And I think every time that you, like the neighboring city, decided not to increase taxes, that means that their property values went up. That means that their tax rate went down. So every year you do not either just maintain whatever your property tax was the previous year, the tax rate, it's going to go down. So I think that's something that happened for I think I showed you that one graph that it bottomed out. And then the only reason why is that we slowly started either keeping the tax rate or slowly increasing it. And as you look at the long-term problem that we have, is that it's a three-legged stool. And that's the thing that people don't understand, is that if you take one of those legs and slowly sand it down, you're going to fall off. And the property taxes we have just let not slide, but they have not been keeping up with the inflation rate. And so that we need to slowly make that leg a little bit longer. And I think, this year it'll probably be 8 to 10. It's my complete and utter guess, depending on what the certified rate comes out to be. But that would cover the 252 and anything else that we had from that other thing. So I'll stop talking, give somebody else.
Okay. I guess we got to figure out what that number might be. But we can move on to some more discussion. And I just want to acknowledge, the property taxes versus fee. I'm still of the same mindset that if we're putting a fee on our roads, it's a tax. I'm acknowledging that fully. So, I'm not trying to brush that under the rug by any means. This is the budget process is stressful, to say the least. It's a big responsibility. Okay, John, what else are you thinking?
Well, so
Can I make one more comment on that?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think the key thing is you were talking about, and I think Citizen Sandy brought it up too, is the fact that, you're just going to stick it in a fee and not tell anybody. And I think that's the big thing is that, well, what happens next year? Because to me, as a citizen, you don't want to be hit once and then think, okay, I can handle that. And then it comes again, and then it comes again, and then it comes again, because the thing is that this is a ginormous elephant. And if we don't tell the citizens, this is our plan, or at least our tentative plan of what's going to happen for the next, heaven forbid, several years, because if we went property tax route, it's going to be 40% this year. What's going to be next year? Because we're taking away that 1 million out of the tough that's been sitting there. We got to replace that. So that's at least another 40% next year. I mean, that to say that we're going to double your taxes almost in the next 2 years, I think people would. Anyway, it's just something that you have to be planning for. Not just this time, but what's next time? And I think that's a huge thing to be transparent, is to say, this is what we're planning. Because if it's in everybody's head, Sandy doesn't know that, her HOA doesn't know that. And that turns into some very mad people. And I would be mad too if I didn't know the plan. So I think that's definitely something you need to work on. Hopefully we can get it by truth and taxation. So we know, well, if we decide fee or tax, we should know pretty soon. And the thing that we can't forget about is there's that study that we need to hook on if we do the fee. Anyway, and then one more thing on the fee is their property taxes, that if we say, oh yeah, we can definitely nail it down, well, the next council could do whatever the crap they want. That's really the bottom line is that, and that's kind of what has happened in the past is that either it gets pushed off or, oh, we don't have that money. When you need the money over here in general fund, unless there's still allocations, unless it's an enterprise fund, you can't, anyway, there's things that keep you from having to cross manage. And I think it's simpler with a fee. I know it's not as transparent, but
Okay.
okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Do you have anything?
Different subject.
Go ahead and switch.
Okay.
That's fine.
Just back to the sales tax revenue number. I feel like the Citizen Budget Committee is very thorough in their studies and evaluations. And if their recommendation is the 5.5%, Phil Swanson, I assume that's that not just you, but the whole committee. Okay, so if their committee comes up with the 5.5 and Councilman Pulver does quite a bit of studying as a hobby of this budget, it's impressive. And if his suggestion was 6%, I'm just curious what staff's question, the staff knows this better than anyone, what their recommendation would be, I guess, as well.
If they're covering.
So the 6.25, is that what you're?
No, that's
Well, so to zero out that 252, 289 number that is the shortfall, 6.25% as a property tax increase would turn that into a zero. But that's because it already includes a 2% in our budget, so you're actually adding a 4.25 to make it float. So I mean, staff would be comfortable with that, with the understanding that more than likely, I mean, we have had years that hit that 6-7% range. But there is some fear that we won't hit that number. So it's
that's why I was saying that you could do it for the 300K versus the shortfall. Then use the 252 for the property tax instead.
yeah, it's I
I
mean,
know it's sixes, I know, but
it's this weird concept, and just to show as an example on what happens to Councilman Pulver's point of maintaining the rate. That's what it's called when you don't change your rate. If values go up and your rate goes down, you still maintain the original rate.
still have to raise taxes.
The 1997 rate for the city was 0.002998. So not quite 3 times, but significant. If you put that same number into the current tax year, we'd be collecting $6.7 million in property taxes this year. Now, understand in that time frame, we split Northview off from us and took some money out and gave it to them about 10%. But if we had $6.7 million in property tax, I'm not going to say things would be better, because many of us know if you have more money, you spend more money. And in the past, the council may not have directed that money to the roads, but I think it's more likely we would have had more money for roads. I got off topic there, but I think staff would recommend, if we went with the 5.5 that was recommended, that's a much more attainable number. And then we would just have to figure out whether through property tax or through eliminating stuff from the budget, where we're going to come up with the other 0.75% that we need to balance that. And then the money for the 300,000 for the CIP. And I think what we'd probably recommend is that those 2 items would be the 300 and the 0.75, or the other. I wish I had an exact number for you, but call it $60,000 would come out of property tax. So you'd end up increasing your property tax number by 360. And then just my perspective from staff, that the nimbleness of the transportation utility fee is very nice. The state, when they created the new pathway for the transportation utility fee, require a public hearing now, and more notice than you would if we were just changing our utility bills. But understand that the utility bills are already going up in the budget, it's $5.42, for the average house. And so there's a lot of money moving. Then the thing I like about the transportation utility fee is the state mandates how it's tracked mandates what it can be used for, and in a lot of ways ties the hands of the city and future councils and future staff. And that's part of the reason that we have that $900,000 balance in our transportation utility fee account is we couldn't just scrape it off and spend it on other stuff. It has to be spent on roads. And the decision was made to just pause while the Pleasant Grove lawsuit happened to decide what we should do with it. So,
So the money wasn't lost.
no, the money wasn't lost. It just, we stopped collecting it.
Right.
But I think the point that was made by the gentleman was that the money, we took it, we stopped collecting the fee and then we rolled it into the property tax, and we increased property tax by $240,000 that year, which is about what we collected every year on the transportation utility fee. And then 8 or 9 months later, the council passed the ordinance that said all property tax goes to public safety. And that's when the money got lost. Because in theory, what the council should have done is then said, well, now we're going to take $240,000 of sales tax and spend it on roads. And we have spent more on roads, but it hasn't been like clearly identified that the money is still going to roads that was there. So, so recommendation would be sales tax to 5.5, property tax enough to cover the original 2% or 3.5% plus 300 and the call it 60 to make that 252, 289 number disappear. And then a transportation utility fee would be my recommendation. But it's, I mean, whichever way you want to go with, I think it's your decision. And the public hearing process is painful. You're going to go through it either way, transportation utility fee or sales tax or property tax, or both. In the past, we have typically, I would say, surprisingly not had a significant number of people come. I mean, those of you who've been around to the last 4 we've had, to have a room like this that has 30 people in it, that's not a lot of people that show up. I do anticipate that at some point the room will fill up more. But some cities it fills up when they're talking about backyard chickens. So it just is, it kind of depends on what makes people feel like the city has crossed the line. And that's your job. That's what you get paid the big bucks for.
Yeah, I just had this is kind of, well, it feeds into the discussion, but before I forget this, I just want to mention it. Brenda had a good point that if some people are relieved of this transportation utility fee through an application process, how does that affect other people? So I just ran a sample number. If you take $1.2 million, divide it by 7,000 homes, and then divide that number that you get into 12 months, you're about, let me just get the number right in front of me, divided by 7,000 homes. We're assuming 7,000 rooftops-ish.
Yeah, excluding businesses. So that's a whole nother component.
Okay, so 1.2 million divided by 7,000 is $171. Divided by 12 months, it's $14.28. So that's the number that we would get if no waiving of fees is included. If you go $1.2 million divided by, say, 6,500 rooftops, so you got $184. You divide that by 12, the number is $15.38. So I'm just trying to illustrate that it's $1-ish more if we were to relieve 500 households. I don't know how to gauge exactly what the participation would be. We'd really have to pin that down. But 500 of 7,000 rooftops, that sounds like that'd be a pretty successful program for that many to apply and get assistance. So I'm just throwing that out for just something to have in your head.
And if the council goes that way, we could ask the consultant who writes our study to provide some information. We could get information from him that says how many families fall in this income level range, and maybe that's how it's calculated. And they would be able to tell us if it was just income. Hey, you have this many households that are at that income level, so that's how many you can expect waivers from. And they could provide us some of that information.
And if you read that Far West study, it really, you have one fee, but then it's graduated and there's a whole bunch of different, it starts getting for businesses is what I'm talking about. And so that there's a lot of, it's not just $15 for some places, it's hundreds. So I don't think there's going to be loss there. I think we'll be fine, but I think you definitely need to look at it to make sure that there's no, oh, we should have made it 16 and now we can't do the roads that we need to or something. Yeah, definitely need to look at that. So I
Yeah.
agree.
So okay, let's not forget this because the Citizen Budget Committee is going to beat us up if we don't talk about this.
And it's important to note that they'll send you a written summary of their comments, just so the council has them. Because I think I maybe forgot this but we are not recommending you make a decision on the rate tonight as staff.
Yep.
Because so a little bit of the pressure's taken off tonight. We just need kind of those three numbers from you for in 2 weeks when we come back.
Yep. The philosophical discussion around the pool. I know last week that was discussed in depth. Well, pun intended? No pun intended? I don't know. But the pool has depths. But that was discussed a lot. And, there were some people in that committee that were very black and white in their approach. They were saying, hey, $11 is what was, or 11 or 11.50 was the amount that was researched and said that if we need to break even, this is what it's got to be. I think the approach that the council has taken over the last few years has been, I see it as progress because we would continue to slip backwards if we weren't increasing the fees as we have over the last couple of years. I can't remember how much it was last year, but I seem to remember $1 or $1.50 was the increase. And then this year we did $1.50 increase. The pool is so hard to predict because of the weather. I was talking to John earlier today and he mentioned, hey, we're having a great gangbusters year so far because it's been hot. It's been an abnormally hot June so far, which has helped. And so it's just hard to completely pin down. But I feel like those rates are heading in the right direction. I'm not opposed about having the discussion of bringing it up to 11 or 11.50, but it seems like it's a little late in the season to have that, knee-jerk implementation of that fee. It seems like something that we might agree to at this point, that we're trending towards that $11 number next year or something like that. But I just feel like it would be hard to just do a ready stop. Everyone's been going to the pool for, I think it's $9.50 now this year. And then, oh, hey, July 1st, we're going to 11. So it's like we increased it by $1.50, then by another $2-ish. It's just, I think that would be difficult. So in my mind, the $11 or $11.50 discussion would be more around, we're kind of agreeing as a council that we want to be there. And maybe we decide that, hey, it's our goal that next year it's going to be there. Thoughts?
So I think, at least from my point of view, being on both sides of the coin for budget committee and here is the fact that if you have, like you said, some black and white people, I think really the philosophical to me is if you're, the pay to play thing. And I think, but the one analogy is the fact that, well, are you paying people for parks? Well, you're paying for the pavilions, that's fine. But the amount of money and time that it takes to mow the lawns in the parks for the city is a lot. And we get $0 for that. So I think when it comes down to the pool, and I have this argument all the time with my wife, is that it's an amenity. It's not, and I think, several people have said that it's not a need, and that's 100% right. But parks are not a need. We don't need to water those. We don't need to mow those, technically, right? If things shut down, and I think that was one of the budget committee things as well, is what can you chop 10% off of? And I think that's some of the things that you can talk about is seasonal things. That would be easy to just go, nope, don't need to do that anymore. But thankfully, we're not in that situation. But at the same time, philosophically, the pool is something that people like to go to. So if it can break even, which is what they're trying to do, or what we're trying to do, and I think staff as well is doing a tremendous job at pushing towards that. I mean, Cummings thinking outside the box for certain things that I'm like, well, we could rent that table out. Technically because that's an important part of the pool. People get there early and put their stuff on it. And well, technically, you should maybe we can rent that. There's a whole bunch of things going on at the pool, and I've having a philosophical discussion with your wife is sometimes very difficult, or your spouse anyway. But that said, I think that's something the city definitely needs to understand, is that if you're trying to break even on something, what is it for? What's its purpose? I think is really you need to step back and address that first. And if you say, yes, we want a pool, okay, well, let's go figure out how to pay for it. And that's kind of where we're at. And I think increasing the fee at an incremental step, I think, is the right way to do it, because if you just slam it home, man, you don't see what the truth factor is, because if you inch into it, people can absorb some of it. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is saying, hey, this is what it really costs, but we're going to take a little bit of time to get there. Anyway.
I agree as well that it would be hard to make that change already this year, where we've already increased it for this summer. To make a second increase for the same summer, I think that would also be hard. Personally, I feel a little bit differently maybe than others on the council. I don't feel like we should incrementally be hiking it up every year until it pays for itself. I feel like it's an amenity that our city has, and whether it should have taken this on in the beginning or not is not what I'm addressing. But what I'm saying is, now that it is here, I would be more concerned about basing that number on what neighboring pools are charging as an entrance fee, and also how many other pools in this state or in this area pay for themselves entirely, because I don't know of any that do. But it seems to me, and I could be wrong, that we've talked about this before, that does Brigham City charge an entrance fee of $8, and so does Ogden charge an entrance fee of $8? That's what I'm vaguely remembering. And anyway, we're charging $9.50. And so I'm fine with that, where we're higher than others. I think we have a lot to offer. But I don't feel like we should keep hiking it into where we're outpricing everyone from attending, and then everyone will start going to other pools. I also feel like I want to have hope for our staff at the Aquatic Center, and hopefully they submit an RFP for the concessions. Remember, for next summer, that's been discussed. And so if that does happen, there could be a incredible amount of revenue there over the, maybe not initially, maybe give it a year or two, but that could drastically change things for us. And maybe we wouldn't need to, I'm not saying we can never make a jump again. I'm not saying that, but I just think that we need to make a price comparable to other cities so that we don't outprice people from coming.
Just to confirm, are you talking about the potential of doing in-house concessions?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Severie.
I've been doing a lot of thinking here, and it seems to me, so here's my thoughts on each of the areas. So it seems like we have always been pleasantly surprised. We have been so careful about the sales tax revenue, and it seems like it's always been significantly more. So I'm okay with making a recommendation on the 5.5 on the sales tax revenue. The citizens are smart. They realize that everybody is being hit by some pretty serious inflation. I was just looking at trying to find costs for asphalt, for example. It was I couldn't find this year, but in 2002 it was $160 per ton. By 2012 it had hit $610 per ton. And I couldn't find 2029, Dave, or 2025, Dave. What do you know? I mean, off the top of your head? Okay. I mean, all of us have been hit by inflation. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to the citizens. Citizens are awesome. Do we have those who can't? maybe make the a comfortable contribution on the transportation utility fee? Yes, we don't. But we're all in this together. So I'm going to recommend that we do the 5.5 on sales tax revenue, the transportation utility fee. I will ask though, John, if, because everybody knows my feelings about a fee versus a tax. If we were to combine that with a property tax, it is earmarked. We can still earmark it very carefully.
We can do what's called a special revenue fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all that money that is collected, we can know will go directly to,
Well, so in the transportation utility fee, it has to go into special revenue fund.
right.
In a property tax, you can also create one as well.
You can also create one as well. And then we've tossed around so many numbers. What is the staff's recommendation for a property tax increase?
It would be the, let's see. It was the, well, so the original was
3 point, it was just under
3.5
3.5.
plus the 300 for the CIP and the 60 to make that 252 balance.
So that would probably put us at 1% would be
Let's see.
not 400,000, but so we're probably talking. Those are a little quicker in math than I am.
Let's see.
Because I really hate to see us lose that $300,000 on the capital improvement plan, capital improvement fund. And I think if we don't keep the momentum.
So we can bring that back as part of the next meeting is a clear breakdown. And if that's
breakdown.
the range that the council's leaning, then we'll show like, this is what it is at a 5.5, a 6.5, a 7, so that you can see how much money it'll generate so the council can pick the rate specifically at next meeting.
Okay, so then I've expressed my concerns, my recommendations, except for the property tax, which it sounds like we will get back in a future meeting.
Yeah, I think the feeling is that we're leaning towards a transportation utility fee, implementing that for the $1.2 million revenue that we're needing for roads. And that we are also trending towards a property tax number that is including that $300,000 contribution to capital improvement fund, and also figuring out the 250K-ish that is from fund balance. And so I'm projecting that this percentage is probably somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% once you start compiling all the numbers together. Am I close? Just so we don't have residents that come to the next meeting and be too surprised by the number, but it seems like the property tax number will likely be somewhere in that 10 to 15% increase number.
Yes, I believe you're correct. It probably, somewhere in that. Yeah.
Okay. And it is incredibly difficult to say what it's going to be without that certified tax number. So we'll probably be calling you every day for the next 7 to 14 days, Saturdays, Sundays, 11 o'clock at night. Okay.
I'll be up. Allie probably has to go potty. So,
Okay.
Better yet, just email us when we have it so that we can be considering that.
as soon as I see it, I'll let you know. Cause I've probably checked it 5 times today. So
Okay.
3 times
So-
during this meeting. So,
So it sounds like there is no action required because we don't have the certified tax rate, but we do at least have an indication of where we're heading. And I think we can go into our next item, which is RDA, correct?
yes.
Okay. So in agenda item 6 -C, we have discussion and or action to recess the city council meeting and convene in an RDA meeting. Do we have a motion to do that? Or do we need a motion for that one?
Yes.
We need a motion to convene into RDA.
I move that we recess the city council meeting and convene in the RDA meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I didn't hear any. So we will go ahead and convene into the RDA portion of this meeting.
Okay.
So agenda item number 7 is discussion and or action to approve ordinance 2025-14, which is adopting the RDA fiscal year 2025-2026 final budget. Presenter is John Call, our illustrious city manager.
So, we talked about these changes already, but they're all shown right here on the RDA section of the budget. The 24,000 for the Placer AI software, the 360,000 that was the autocorrect. This was the original number. This is the new number, or sorry, this is that mix up that Cassell wouldn't let me back out. And then this is the new number, understanding that there's been these projects that have moved around. So, and then here's the 115 for the turn lane that won't be done till next year. And then here's the Placer AI coming out of the CDA budget. So those are the changes, stuff that I think that we've explained pretty good. And for those who are interested, we held off the turn lane addition till after the parade because we didn't want that corner torn up during the parade on July 4th. So that's the reason why I got pushed into next year. So.
Okay. Since I feel like we've discussed a lot of the RDA items in the previous budget discussion, I would feel comfortable opening this with a public hearing, and then we'll go into discussion after. So we are going to go ahead and open up a public hearing on ordinance 2025-14, which is adopting the RDA fiscal year 2025-26 final budget. So anyone that would like to come, please come up to the lectern or raise your hands online. You can raise one hand online is acceptable as well. I don't know why I said raise your hands. If you want to raise both, that's okay. I am not seeing anyone in the room or online that wants to make a comment on this public hearing. So I would move that I would ask for a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor to close this public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is section B of number 7, which is discussion and or action to approve ordinance 2025-14, which is adopting the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. Unless there's something I'm missing, I feel like everything was pretty well discussed in that first slide that you presented, John, in a previous discussion. And so unless if there's anything else you want to discuss or maybe just re-highlight some things, I think we might have a short-ish discussion on this one.
Yeah, just probably the thing is I'm most excited about is the Placer AI software. That's going to provide some interesting data points. And a good example is we will have one of the first assignments Scott will look at is what happens to the people before they come to our parks and other recreation facilities, and where do they go after? Because
Or the pool.
Yeah. Because the anecdote I've used since Justin told me about it a couple of weeks ago is Maverick, he goes in there every morning to get his Mountain Dew, and the manager stopped him a couple of weeks ago and said, "Hey, when do you open the pool?" And Justin said, "Oh, this is the date. Why does it matter?" And the guy said, "We turn into the top selling slushy Maverick in the US as soon as the pool opens." So he has to order boxes and boxes of ices or I don't know. They're not slushies, but anyway, so it'll be interesting to see because we can box around the pool and see where people are coming from before they go there within a half mile, right? We don't pinpoint like their house, and where they go after to see, are they going to Lee's and Smith's and Little Caesars? And it'll help us better understand if it helps like the pool or just like when we have football games, like in October at Oaklawn, where do those parents and kids go after and before the games? And it'll just help us better understand how commercial works in our city and even our roads too. It'll help us with some traffic studies as well. So we're excited. So
Councilman Severing.
If you're okay, Mayor, I think we've Mayor Pro Tem, I guess I should say. We've been working on that. Anybody that's been here over the last 8 months knows we've been working really, really diligently with the RDA. So unless somebody else feels a little differently, I move that we approve ordinance 2025-14, adopting the RDA fiscal year 2025-2026 final budget.
Second.
Okay, I think this is a roll call vote. So we will start a roll call vote. Okay, let me just reiterate. We had a motion by Councilman Severing and a second by Councilman Pulver, and we're going to start a roll call vote with Councilman Pulver coming my way.
Yes.
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 Yes. That means that ordinance 2025-14 was passed unanimously. Now we are looking for a motion to adjourn the RDA meeting and reconvene in a regular city council meeting. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have number 8, which is a discussion and or action to approve Resolution 10-2025, authorizing Public Treasurer's Investment Fund. This is going to be Casey Hunsaker, who is our city treasurer. Casey, thanks for your patience through our long discussion.
Good evening, council. So this should be pretty brief. This is just more of a housekeeping item than anything. When I became city treasurer back in August, this resolution actually should have happened to allow me access to the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund. And I found this a few weeks ago, and I figure now with having Peter on board is a good time. Now is as good as time as any to fix this and right this wrong. So this resolution will just remove, for clarification, it'll just remove Jamie Jones, our former finance director, and Bryce Nelson as the former city treasurer, their access on the records of the state to the PTIF. And then we're adding myself, Peter Brown as our finance director, and then John Call to have access to the PTIF. So this is a resolution that's required by code by the state. And so it fell through the cracks back in August. I'm just trying to rectify it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I don't.
John, or Casey, question on that. Did this did this expose the city at all by not having it signed within a certain amount of time? I seems like a simple mistake, but question needs to be asked.
So the exposure was probably the fact that by not having a new resolution, is anyone who was on the old one still technically could access it, whether they didn't have passwords and things like that would have given them. So we're not aware of any sort of breach, but this is a good cleanup. And this just provides the city 3 people. So if there ever is changeover, someone has the ability to go to the PTIF at the state treasurer and say, hey, I need access. For example, I don't actually have a password to PTIF, and maybe I don't need one because I don't move money around. But if Casey and Peter are off vacationing in Hawaii and were knocked unconscious for a week at the public treasurer's, conference or whatever you go to,
Sure.
then I could at least help keep us operating by getting access at that point. So
Oddly specific example.
yeah.
I'm gonna put the request in to have the conference in Hawaii next year. So John said so. No, I like John said, I think that it just Bryce and Jamie have had access, even though they don't have passwords anymore. They could have gone to the state and got their passwords reinstated. So we just want to clean that up and make it better.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this one?
Nope.
Okay, great. So I think we are looking for a motion to approve Resolution 10-2025, which is authorizing Public Treasurer's Investment Fund.
I'll
Do we
make
have
a motion. Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 10-2025, authorizing Public Treasurer's Investment Fund
I second.
as proposed. Yeah.
Okay, this one will go to a roll call vote. So we have a motion by, oh, who motioned that one?
Me.
That was a motion by Councilwoman Watson, and that was seconded by Blake Severing. And so we're going to start the roll call vote with Councilman Pulver.
Yes.
Councilwoman Watson,
Yes.
Councilman Severing,
Yes.
Councilman Dalpass votes yes. Okay, now we are going to go into council department reports. And I have the pleasure of being on this list. I got some information from Chief Brian Einen earlier today. And let me just pull up that information and I will get you guys, we'll get heading in the right direction here. Okay, here we are. So the update that we have is that Lieutenant Jason Childs is retiring. So his last day will be this week, June 12th. And so we do have external and internal applications that are coming in for that position. And the testing for that position should begin next week. So just be aware of that. And then this Friday, June 13th, the annual North Ogden Police Department golf tournament is going to be happening. It's a really good cause that ends up benefiting the Sub for Santa program that North Ogden Police puts on. I deeply regret that I will not be at the tournament this year, but I hope you guys have a wonderful time. I know you guys always have some really good raffles and prizes that are up for grabs that help towards producing towards this good cause, and hope you guys have fun. That's my report from the police department. Next, we're going to have a report by Council Member Severing on building and planning.
Yes, thank you. So I received from our illustrious planning director this information. West States Development, that is immediately south of 1700 North, is going to be going through their plat and site plan review at the next Planning Commission meeting. Second item, Northview Phase 10 is moving forward to plat review at the next PC meeting as well. Last but not least, America First Credit Union has applied for their building permit and will be under construction soon. And if you don't know, that's going to be on the corner of 2700 and Washington. So that's all I have.
Thanks for the updates. Those are wonderful. We're going to now move into public comments. And just as a reminder, we're looking for a maximum of 5 minutes per resident. And we're looking forward to hearing from you. So we either stand up or raise your hand online.
Sandy Cochran, North Ogden. The first thing I have is, has the pool ordered their slushy machine yet? And the second thing is, so last Friday, I was really surprised when Ryan made her post and there were all these names of candidates, and I was looking down it, and quite a few of the names were people I didn't know, hadn't seen, had never seen them here. And now tonight, I still don't know them, haven't seen them, and they're not here. And I'm just wondering if these people really expect citizens to vote for them when they don't show up here, they don't show an interest in participating. None of them are online, and if they're on YouTube, they can't comment there. And if they want to be sitting where you all are, they should be in a position to comment. So I hope this gets to them. Thanks.
Come back. Kevin Burns, still from North Ogden. Just a follow-up comment on Councilmember Pulver's comments about the pool and the parks and needs and wants and that type of thing. And I would just like to encourage you to not undervalue our parks, particularly as we continue to build apartments and townhomes and occupy open space. And I know sometimes when we talk about budget cuts and where we're going to find money, parks are always near the top of the list, not mowing the parks and not taking care of the parks. But they are a real value to our community, given the types of housing and the population that's coming into our town. So thank you.
I feel like we should just line us up and you're going in the direction of a fee.
We know your
and-
name, but what is your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew that too. Brenda Ashdown, live in North Ogden. You're going with the direction of a fee, and you said that if you would go with the fee, you would make sure that the information would get out to the residents. And also possibly with the information getting out that it would be increased. I don't know how you're going to do that. There's 5 of us here. How are you going to get out to the residents that they're going to have this added fee and that the possibility of it going up again next year? You have truth in taxation, which has, the public hearing and whatever on the website, and that people see that and they get all excited. I don't know if that's the direction that you need to go. Make sure it's on the website, Facebook, all those kind of things. I know that those of us who don't get a mail bill, I'm not sure how we will find out. Those that get an actual mail bill, I know you put little snippets on the bottom of that, but I think that needs to be something that you seriously think about, because although there's only 4 or 5 of us here that know that you said that you would get that information out, but I think that you should. Thank you.
It looks like we don't have any more comments in the room. We will head to Susan Kilborn, our online attendee.
Susan Kilborn, ever present, resident of North Ogden, coming up to bat fourth here. I have a question. First of all, you guys did a great job tonight. You really put some thought into all this, and I was uber focused, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody's compliments. I love the honesty. I love good discussion any day of the week. Now, I have a question. I am swimming with ideas, catch this, about making money at the pool. Who do I talk to? And do not give me the name of someone who says, oh, I'll call you. Let's talk about it. Give me the name of someone who wants to sit down with me, because I am brimming with ideas. Thank you. I think that might be Christina.
We'll have Christina address your question during staff comments or council comments.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Susan.
Yep. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, we are going to close public comments at this time, as we don't show any more online or in person. So next we are going to move to mayor, council, and staff comments. I don't want to get used to this, but being the mayor and such, I would like to take privilege to comment first. No, but I do want to just say, Brenda had some really good thoughts on the fee. It is true, it's hard to get the information out. Technically, when we put in this transportation utility fee, it will be publicly noticed. It will be on the website. Anyone that signed up for the automatic emails that you get from the city. Oh, well, okay. That's let's say this. I can't figure out why you're not getting them. I've been receiving them for the last few years. I know of others that are. We should look into that. But it will be noticed out to the community through the email. You get emails that say we have a public hearing. It's such and such date at this time. I think it would be a good idea to, I don't know, John, how doable this would be on and we have the challenge of people that aren't getting a physical copy of their bill. So I don't know exactly how to do this, but it seems like a one pager showing that map that shows the roads for the first year. That would be the best case scenario to get out to citizens, where they can see exactly which roads are intended to be either completely resurfaced or chip sealed or whatever they are going to be. If it's not possible to get a one pager in the utility notice, at least in that one liner, have an exact thing that says, type in this link to the city website and it will take you exactly to the information on this fee, something like that, and have it on the city website, uploaded for people to see. Coming years might be a little bit more challenging, but we can indicate that in the coming years, we're planning on maybe at a minimum doing $3 million worth of roads per year is the plan, the at least plan, and try to indicate that we will provide maps as soon as they are available. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that'll be good, and I think as we go through the process of doing the fee and the study, I think we'll also have recommendations in there on this is how we're going to get the word out, and make sure that Katie signs off on all those as kind of like our communication person, so that she can get those all broadcast out on the website, and work with like Bowen to get the website page built that shows all the information and things. So those are really good ideas.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other thoughts from council or staff? Let's start with council, I guess.
You just put a sign under the America First sign, just saying North Ogden stuff. Anyway, mayor's not here to make fun of, so I got to use you instead. Brenda, what's your email? Is it a Hotmail? Is it a Gmail? Okay, that eliminates that then. Because sometimes I have an issue with MSN or Hotmail. Sometimes they won't. Anyway, well that screws that up. Anyway, and then the other thing was, and it might be, it's June, and I guess the question is, we haven't really talked about Barker Park and how we're integrating with Bill Barker Park. Is that something we can, because if the trails don't get maintained by Bill Barker Park, that they will be overgrown, and I don't know. Haven't really talked about it. June snuck up on me, a couple of folks have chatted about it, but they haven't really done anything about it. And I guess that's, do we work with the parks, Dave, somebody? I don't know.
Yeah, it would be with the parks crew. So
Okay.
I'll talk about it with staff in our staff meeting tomorrow and see what we can do for there.
So, I mean, you have a pretty big volunteer group of people that just need to be directed, to be honest. They can do what they want. And I think that's one thing, but if it's city owned thing, then, let's use them for something.
Okay.
That's it. Councilwoman Watson.
Susan Kilborn, if you're still listening, I will reach out to you as the liaison for recreation and the aquatic center. I'd love to chat ideas with you.
Perfect. Anything from you, Councilman Severing?
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay, I just had one more thing that popped into my mind, and I'm not trying to prolong this meeting. Something
Yes, you
came in the back in my archive of my brain about Barker Park that was commented by Steph Casey probably a year or two ago. There is that ravine that is by the grass. We're gonna have the fireworks there this year, and we need to double check that everything's safe leading into that ravine. It sounds like the grass kind of just falls off, and there's potential that kids could be running and just run themselves off that ravine. So if you could please take an action to look into that before then, and at a minimum, maybe put one of those like orange net fences or something. I mean, that's up to you guys to decide, but anyways.
Okay.
Any staff comments? Okay, it looks like we don't have any comments from staff. So we are going to look for a motion to adjourn by one of our council women.
Motion to adjourn.